You're watching the World Today News Bulletin on Eyeafrica TV, coming to you live from our studios in Banjul. Many thanks for joining us. I am Amadou Kante, and now the news in detail. Now, Sri Lanka nationals are venting their frustration over the prevailing economic situation in the island nation as people hustle to access their daily needs. Now, the shortage of fuel and other essential goods has led to the closure of learning and business centers, leaving others worried about the situation. Now, following a massive protest calling for the president's resignation, the country's future is apparently bleak. Here's more details of that in this report.
Serpentine queues for fuel in capital city Colombo run through lanes and by-lanes. Lankans wait for days outside petrol sheds, which are now being managed by the armed forces. People are running out of patience as they struggle to lead their daily lives.
It's not a very pleasant thing to be in queues for such long hours, and we find that the whole country is heading to disaster.
Others like Nilupal Batuvita Arachi, who runs a hardware business, has opted out of this waiting game. He repaired his cycle a month back and is happy to pedal off to work.
Can't stay on the fuel queue because it takes about 2-3 days to get the fuel, and then we don't have that much time to waste because we have to work, and that even the buses are very late and we have to wait for a long time to get a bus. I hope the situation will improve, but right now I'm cycling.
Shortages of essentials have led to closure of schools, businesses and offices in the country.
My major concern is there's no future for them here. But then at the same time we can't afford to send them away, and they have to somehow or other finish their studies here and do the undergraduate studies here. But then everything is getting delayed.
At this juncture, the other apprehension the island nation is to devise an economic recovery plan urgently.
How quickly we can legislate the tax changes, how quickly we can bring an interim budget, because that was supposed to, the Prime Minister failed to do so. And if those things happen, the process can be expedited.
The Lankans have been protected by the President and the Prime Minister since April. The President has said that he will step down on Wednesday.
And from the report then, next to Nigeria, we are, because Nigerian authorities have expressed concern over the rapidly increasing drug abuse in the West African nation. Now, the surge in illicit drug business within the sub-region has become a financial enabler for armed groups in the Sahel, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Now, experts observe that the rampant drug abuse practices are responsible for the growing insecurity and disorders in Nigeria, like in many other countries. Here's more details of that in this report.
Like several West African countries, Nigeria has been on the radar as one of the countries with high use of cannabis and opioids in the world. The youth make up 70% of Nigeria's 200 million population, and many of them engage in drug abuse. Findings from a new UNODC report reveal that the rising demand for illicit drugs has bred a viable trade route.
We are also a consuming nation. That is the unfortunate thing about that cocaine and the opioids. Now we have people consume them here, so we're not just only a transit nation at the moment, but we're also a consuming nation.
The UNODC report also underpins how drug money in the West African trade routes is enabling revenue for armed groups in the Sahel.
I believe also that money realized from drugs is used to purchase arms, and at least that's established by governments in the Sahel. And if you look at the activities, this further buttressed by the activities of the drug law enforcement agents who have been making hauls. And I think with that, there's a lot of catches and a lot of arrests being made. Once that is achieved, and drugs are no more accessible to criminals, the crime also will relatively reduce.
In 2018 alone, the UNODC says that about 14.3 million Nigerians abused drugs. Experts say that number has risen over the years. This has further deepened the nation's vulnerability to violence and crimes such as kidnapping, banditry, and other growing antisocial disorders.
All of these security challenges have at their basis the problem of drug abuse, because nobody in his or her right senses will go out to go and kidnap people.
You have the drug cartels that use crime as a way of maintaining control over their territories that are associated with drug manufacturing and drug distribution. You have disinhibition, poor judgment, poor decision making, which is impulsivity, which leads to a lot of crimes being committed when people are high on drugs. That's a vulnerability period for them to commit crimes.
Now, countries like Nigeria are focusing more on public campaigns against illicit drug use and providing restorative therapy for drug abusers. The Global Organized Crime Index shows that West Africa saw unprecedented cocaine seizures between 2019 and 2021. Vulnerable coastal states stretch from Senegal through Gambia and Guinea-Bissau to Guinea. Drugs from Latin America flow through the West African corridor and end up in Europe. To curb the menace of drug trafficking, experts recommend that West African governments boost security checks across their corridors.
And that report there is coming from the Nigerian capital, Abuja. Elsewhere in the continent, South Africa's tourism industry has registered a significant recovery from the adverse effects of the global COVID-19 pandemic. Now, despite the prevailing economic hardship, the country's tourism sector is also widening its activities to accommodate more tourists. Now, the Rainbow Nation is Africa's hardest hit nation by a coronavirus pandemic, but efforts are underway to revitalize the tourism sector. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Tourism numbers suffered a 72% decline in 2020 due to COVID. This was a massive setback for South Africa, as tourism is an important contributor to GDP and employment. But there's been a solid turnaround since then. According to Statistics South Africa, tourist accommodation grew 83% in the first quarter of this year, with total accommodation income climbing 88% to $113 million.
Some of our properties have still got a little way to go to get back to 2019 numbers and build from there, but others are far exceeding where we were in 2019, which is encouraging. Now, in 2022, our numbers are also at a record place. It doesn't mean each hotel is doing spectacularly. Like I said, some are recovering better than others.
The tourism sector is not only rebounding, but also expanding.
During the last stages of COVID, we obviously explored the leisure market. Now it's a much bigger component of our business. So leisure is really a very robust and great revenue source now in this industry. We previously just focused on the weddings and the conferencing, and we are now very excited. We plan to expand with another 75 rooms and a spa, because there's just such a robust leisure business that we actually see in this country.
Despite the difficulties of COVID, ANU managed to hold on to all 15 of its properties.
Through the relationships we built and through our expansion in acquiring Fortis, it really set the stage for us to talk to other hotel owners and companies who were trying to figure out what we were. That's how do we make it to the other side of this? And in building those relationships and opening those discussions, it made sense for a lot of them to take the next step, come under the ANU wing, and that's really facilitated the growth that we've experienced from here.
While international travel was restricted, South Africa recorded a massive uptick in domestic tourism. Now the industry is gearing up for both domestic and international travelers.
There is the estate being developed around behind. It's a 350 hectare property, so there is that being developed as well. A lot of people are looking for something exclusive and something really tangible that they can enjoy and be happy to part with their money knowing that that was good value.
Industry experts believe that tourism in South Africa will recover this year to pre-pandemic levels, with even higher tourist arrivals expected for 2023. Developments and expansions will continue to meet this demand.
Great news there for South Africa's tourism sector, as the industry is recovering from the effects of the COVID-19 global pandemic. And you're watching the World Today News Bulletin on Eyeafrica TV, coming to you live from our studios in Banjul, and found a report there from South Africa. We now take a break and come back shortly. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Eyeafrica TV, and once again, many thanks for joining us. Now, Justice Mamadou Jallow of the Bundunkakunda High Court on Wednesday ordered for Babukar Keita, alias Bob Keita, and one Mr. Jum to be taken to the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital and have their blood samples taken for the DNA. Now, Babukar Keita is standing trial on rape allegation, but has since denied any wrongdoing. Mafuji Sese has the rest of that in this report.
The trial was called on Wednesday afternoon. Kemben Tal, Deputy Director of Civil Litigation, announced his appearance for the state, while Attorney Lamin S. Kamara appeared for the accused person. State Counsel Kemben Tal informed the court that the last adjournment was made following court order for the DNA of the demised Mohammed to be taken, and for the court to observe some housekeeping. He said two things flown from the ruling of the court, adding that all the modalities are in place for the immediate implementation of the court. Counsel Kembenta seeks the leave of the court for the accused persons to proceed to the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital for the collection of a sample at the end of the proceeding. He told the crowded court that the DNA evidence will need to be submitted by the state by expert evidence record intimated at the last hearing. He said on Friday, July 8, 2022, the object of the DNA testing, Mohammed, passed away in the Senegalese capital, Dakar, but that the DNA samples have been collected before his demise. Replying on points of law, the defense counsel lawyer Lamin S. Kamara objected to the application, arguing that it has no basis in law, even though the court ordered that the accused person, Babukar Keita, Mohammed, the child, and one Pamodu Jom should be subjected themselves to the DNA, having their blood samples extracted on July 7, 2022. Attorney Kamara informed the court that when the ruling was read, Counsel Jallow informed the court that the accused person is desirous of appealing against the order of the court and therefore applied the order of the ruling, which the court promised to avail the right to appeal against. The ruling is the constitutional right of the accused person, and that right can only be competently exercised by the accused persons if he is availed the copy of the ruling of the court. The appeal will only be rendered competent if the judgment order or ruling is attached to the notice of the appeal. A part of the ruling, a stay of the execution of the ruling of July for the court to determine. Pending the determination of stay of the ruling of July 7th, the state cannot proceed with what they determined to do. Counsel Kamara further went on to say the court needs to avail the copy of the ruling to the accused person, and therefore the court cannot grant the application today, which can only be confirmed or done if the ruling is served on the accused person. Lawyer Kamara told the court that the state application is seeking to foster the submission that DNA has been collected on Mohammed before he passed on the 8th of July 2022, adding that this submission is worrying and disturbing, to say the least, because it can only mean that the blood sample was allegedly extracted from a child in coma, and the blood sample were collected before the court order and in the presence of no interested person, counsel, and the accused person, and that is unacceptable to the accused person because it's against all principles of fair hearing and transparency. Kamara said if the blood extraction of the child is to be subjected to DNA examination, it must be done in a manner that inspires confidence and transparency and does not enclose doors. He stresses that compliance with the order of the court means extracting blood samples from the three parties, Pamodu Jom, Mohammed the child, and Babukar Keita, after the ruling or after it was ordered and in the presence of all interested parties in order assurance of the show. He urged the court to refuse the application and ordered that the defendant is served with the ruling immediately for the defense to file an appeal and a stay of proceeding before the court within 2 days. Delivering the ruling, Justice Jallo adopted the submission of the state counsel. Justice Jallo stressed that the stay of proceeding will not be granted if it is intended to waste court time. He ordered that both Pa Modu Jom and Babukar Keita's blood samples be taken at the Edward Francis Small Hospital. Justice Jallo declared that he is satisfied with the blood samples collected on Mohammed the child as long as it's from a hospital. The matter continues on July 18, 2022 at 11 a.m. in the morning. For Eyeafrica News, I am Mafuji Sise.
And from the report there by Mafuji Sise, on to our final story now. The African Development Bank chief has agreed to lead Zimbabwe's debt clearing initiative with a view to ending its long-standing economic struggle. The Southern African country currently owes more than $13 billion from several creditors, including the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. While highlighting some of the stumbling blocks ahead, the AFDB chief is adamant of a breakthrough in his new mandate. Here's more details of that in this report.
Dr. Akinwumi Adesina held talks with Zimbabwe's president, treasury officials, and the private sector, after which he accepted a role in helping the Southern African nation to try to win international support for its debt clearance plan.
This is our arrears clearance roadmap, arrears clearance strategy. Now, but for this to work well, for us to be successful, we need a champion. And I'm pleased to say that Dr. Adesina has agreed to be a champion, to cajole all partners around the world, within Zimbabwe and everywhere, for us to be able to implement our arrears clearance. If we don't do that, we don't clear our arrears, it will continue to hamper our ability to complete our economic reforms.
Zimbabwe owes about $13.5 billion to several creditors, including the World Bank, IMF, European Investment Bank, and the African Development Bank. It's been making token payments of $700,000 per quarter to service its obligations to the AFDB and hopes it can make a more meaningful dent on or restructure its outstanding obligations. The AFDB president said no one can climb up a hill with a backpack full of sand, referring to how Zimbabwe's debt arrears are weighing down the economy and highlighting why it is important to have that burden lifted. He expressed confidence a resolution could be found despite Western sanctions on Zimbabwe.
There are reforms. The minister mentioned economic reforms. There are, of course, political governance reforms that are also needed. There are also rapprochement with the international community, and that's why I'm here, to help that particular process. Yes, and we've done this before. You know, when we had the situation with Somalia, African Development Bank worked very closely with the World Bank and with IMF, and we cleared the arrears for Somalia. When it came to the issue of Sudan, we did exactly the same thing. African Development Bank, World Bank, IMF, working with all the bilaterals, we cleared that. Of course, the context and situations are different, but once there is a commitment to it, everybody knows that Zimbabwe has to be back.
Zimbabwe's government says a concrete plan to expunge its arrears is key to attracting foreign direct investment and unlocking funding for infrastructure.
And from the report from the Zimbabwean capital, Harare, we eventually bring this news edition to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, as ever, you can visit on our website on Eyeafrica.tv. But for now, many thanks for the privilege of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.